Hey everybody, it's Emily, the Crazy Worm Lady. I am here with my 4 10-gallon Rubbermaid Roughnecks that I have some of my red wigglers in, and I wanted to give you guys a little update, so let's get into the bins. Okay, so here's my first 10-gallon, and I wanted to take a peek because last week when we looked into these bins, I noticed a few potworms. So I wanted to see if we spot any more and tell you a little bit about some suggestions I had to deal with them. Let's pull back. The worms are looking pretty active, which is great. I don't see any potworms in this little area, but I believe the last place I fed was in this center section. As I mentioned last week, my burlap's starting to fall apart and I'm getting stuck in it when I'm searching in the bin. Yeah, lots of worms, really good size. Not seeing potworms, which is awesome. So it was suggested to me that potworms tend to thrive in acidic conditions, and in the dry worm food that I use, which includes some oyster shell and eggshell for grit and as a buffer, that perhaps, you know, the flour, I was using some old flour that had gotten some of those, I think they call them weevils, in it. So I shoved that flour in the freezer, and I've just been mixing it in with my worm mix, but I was told that sometimes this will create an acidic environment, especially older flour. So I'm going to leave that out of my dry worm mix for now, and I did add some garden lime as well to my bins, hoping to regulate the conditions and hopefully get rid of some of these potworms. But the good thing is in this bin I'm not seeing any right now, so let's peek into one of the other bins. I think in this light you can really see some of these smaller worms that tend to climb up on my lids here. I never have many, but a few that kind of go exploring. So I'm going to get these guys back into the bin, and then we'll take a look inside. Okay, so here's my next tote. As you can see, this is where they kind of go exploring. It just covers the walls and castings. But as I mentioned before, I do not get any escapees from these bins. And I actually had a suggestion from a friend on one of the vermicomposting forums that perhaps these holes that I should cut out sections, or perhaps cut out some sections over here and put screen over it so there's even more airflow, because the condensation that builds on the edges tends to encourage the worms to go exploring. Okay, let's take a peek. Definitely looks like these bins could be fed again. I'm not really seeing much food, and I usually, you know, can identify right away where they were fed because they just get in mass numbers right there. So I'll probably feed this bin today or tomorrow. Looks like perhaps I fed in this middle area. I see some newer cardboard and a few more worms than on that other side. They're really looking good. I'm not seeing potworms again, which is awesome. So let's look at this other side over here. And I wanted to give a shout out to London Worms and Gardens. They acknowledged me on the Shout Out Sunday, which I was really honored. I love his channel. It is really a wealth of information on worms as well as gardening, and he has quite the following, and I would definitely encourage you to check him out as well. I have watched, I think, just about every worm video that he has, and I've learned a whole lot from it. I'm real excited. He's starting a new series on a worm tower, which is similar to the Worm Factory 360. So I'm really anxious to see that series and to learn some more from him, because I do have my Worm Factory, which tends to get some bugs in it, and I want to see how he manages his bins. But again, I really wanted to shout him out as well, because, you know, he was a big help for me as I was getting started, and I'm still extremely amateur at this. So definitely go and check out his page. And let's peek at another Rubbermaid. Okay, so there's some worms climbing on top of my burlap in this bin. Again, I'm wondering if they're looking for some food, because there's not a whole lot of undigested food in this system. So I'll probably do my usual blending of some food and feed this bin, like I said, tonight or tomorrow, to give them a little bit more to munch on. And again, I'm excited. I'm not seeing potworms. I'm seeing some baby worms. I'm trying to get my camera to focus, but got some nice worms in here. So we'll look at this other side. I'll probably skip peeking at my last bin because I'm pretty encouraged this bin looks good. I'm thinking maybe the garden lime that I added kind of got rid of those potworms, because it helped neutralize the pH. So I do think I will give you a peek into my worm factory, and then we'll call it a day. Just wanted to give this quick update today. So let's peek into the worm factory. Okay, so here's my worm factory. This is my empty tray with just bedding in it. I like that to deter pests, and it does absorb moisture from below. So there's actually some worms hanging out up here. So I'm wondering if the same deal, because I fed this bin the same time as my Rubbermaids the other day, if they're starting to get hungry. So let's take a peek here. Oh my goodness. They are everywhere. So I'm going to knock some of these guys into the bin. And let's peel back some layers, see what's going on in here. This bin is my oldest bin. And like I've said, I've had some pests and things like that, but it's definitely the most established. I definitely think it has the most worms out of all of my bins. And this compost is just really starting to look really, really nice. You know, there's obviously still some bedding they have to work through, but knock this guy down. But it's looking really excellent. So again, I'm very pleased with this. And I thought I would also take a peek into the base of my bin. Just kind of like the sump area where you can collect drainage and things like that, because on London Worms and Gardens, I had commented on his new experimental bin because he was getting a lot of water down in his base. So I wanted to show you what I did and what I commented on his video the other day. So let's go take a peek down there. Okay, so shockingly, this is not a tray. This is the sump level. Down here's a spigot, and it drains down into this old Tupperware cylinder that I have. I have only gotten drainage twice since I've had this bin, but the 2 times that I did have it, I found that under this sump here, where all the fluid was collecting, the worms were drowning. So what I had mentioned to London Worms and Gardens that I do is I have just some stones or pebbles, and I place them all around, make sure they don't get into it, around and below the spigot, and that way if any sort of drainage or fluid collects in here, that my worms are able to climb up and out. But can you believe the amount of castings that fall through to this bottom layer? It's just, it blows my mind. And I mean, they look absolutely gorgeous. And there's always some worms hanging out down here. And that's why I have this paper down here as well, to give them a little something to munch on if they have trouble getting back up into the upper layers. But look at how nice this compost is. I mean, I really could just take these handfuls and throw it on my plants right now. As a matter of fact, I probably will. But I just thought I'd take a peek down here again to give you guys an idea of what I do to try to manage this area and to try to prevent any of my worms from drowning. I tend to have this problem if I add a lot of like watermelon, like real water-rich foods. I'm actually pulling some of this out right now. So typically you really don't want a whole lot of drainage coming down to your sump area, but it does happen. So when it does, my best suggestion for this sump area is to just put some pebbles. And that way, like you can see this little guy, they can just crawl over it and crawl back up into the compost and all that's fallen through. So that's my update for today. Again, thank you to London Worms and Gardens. Thank you to all my new subscribers. And I look forward to giving you guys some more content every week. So please check back in, like the video, and subscribe if you'd like some more content. Hope you guys have an excellent day.